Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are in the world today, you're listening to The New Way. And here I am with Dennis Barker, and we were talking on Revolution Radio on his show, Free Association. And turns out we want to keep the conversation going. Dennis, why don't you say hello to the viewers?
Hi, folks. How are you doing? I hope you're all right.
Okay.
It's a good show.
Go ahead.
It was a good show. It was a nice conversation.
Yes, and we got into some game theory and some group theory. And the idea of 5 people changing the world was, I think it was Margaret Mead, who was the sociologist who said that, who got all the fame. But
Right.
the way that the Fibonacci seems to work is that we can reset the value, and whatever the reset value is, that starts a group at size 1 again. And
Right.
once you've started it at size 1, you manage to be able to use simpler mathematics and simpler group theory, because group theory from 1 to 8 is a lot less complicated than group theory from 21 to 34.
Right.
But if you reset it from 1 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 5 to be 21 to 34 to 55, 89, and 144, that would be a second order grouping. And then if you started at 89 and went to 144, 233, 377, and 610 would be the third order grouping. And so we just got promoted to fourth order by that way of thinking. And so everything's new. There's a whole new world because the function of scale changed. It also means that looking back the other way, that by resetting, this group is in the 21 to 34 group. The next reset, the one that just happened, is too far away from the one single person group, the original existence group that was me, that there's no way I could possibly handle any of this alone. It is developed to the point where I had to release the bird and the pigeon flew off and all that sort of stuff. It's out there in the world. Anybody can pick it up and learn how to do it. But the whole key is you got to play a game of existence with yourself, get command of your group of 1, your individual, then get command of your next group of 1, the whole human race. And until you come to grips with both of those, you're not even ready to form a group of 2.
All right. Well, I've got some things up my sleeve that will help people to get to the whole human race part. There's a thing I do called Immunix, which is a weird culty thing that I picked up off YouTube about 10 years ago when I was looking for cures for cancer on YouTube, as you do. And it turns out that they do claim it cures cancer. I've never tested it for that. But what I have tested it with is telesales, because it's a way of getting rid of resistance. It's a way of kind of intuitively tracking a route through all of the blockages that stop you from getting to where you want to be, even if you don't know quite where you want to be. I used to use it when I was sitting in the telesales room when I started to get frustrated. I would do a little bit of Immunix, clear out whatever thing came up to the surface. And I could do this between phone calls. I had about 15 seconds between phone calls, and you can do it between phone calls in a call center. It's if you kind of if you get used to it, you can anyway. But you can guarantee once I'd done that in Munich session, within half a day, I'd be hitting my target for the day.
Is that
So,
how you spell Immunix?
It's ICS.
Okay.
The end. It's a guy called Beard Barnes came up with it. It's kind of a group effort. They were running seminars and bits and pieces in the 90s, and I think he cured his herpes by doing some kind of hybrid muscle testing intuitive thing, and that it came out of that. But it's useful and it's interesting and it's very weird. But ultimately, the language doesn't really matter. It's the structure of it that matters. So the structure of it is the same as the other things I've found that work. So it's not the technique that matters. It's the structure of the technique. They're all kind of structured the same way, the things that I found that work.
Okay. No, structure is very important. It has to do a lot with the form that things take. And when you see the same form being used in completely different systems, it reinforces that that's a useful form for things to take.
Yeah, it starts to look like it's a foundation. It's like a combination of 2 or 3 things that are foundational. And they've all got a letting go piece to them. They've all got a kind of, you work out what you think might be going on, give it a name, and then with Immunix, you take it out like with a positive act of will or whatever. With the other things that I do, you do it intuitively and just let go of it, or you transmute it. The violet flame is a similar kind of deal, but you're transmuting. That's more of an alchemical kind of transmutation process, but it amounts to letting go. It amounts to letting go of the first thing and turning it into something else. You can't turn it into something else without letting go of it. So,
in a way,
yeah.
the tree that sets up the calendar has a letting go process also. The fact that it ends in void means that once you've done your work and put it all together and gotten the sound off your mind, you let it go and relax and move on to the next thing.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the key pieces, because you can't move to the next place without letting go. And that's one of the things I was stuck on for years. Obviously, the violet flame I've been using off and on for years, but I didn't realize what the mechanism was that was working until I started looking for other techniques, and I started comparing everything. And it's always a letting go piece that makes the difference. For me, at least. I can't speak for the whole human race, but I am going to speak for the whole human race just because I can.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Every individual as a single human being can speak for the whole human race.
Yeah.
But the human race is all of us, and we all have different perspectives on the same thing. And we can hone in on what the truth is if we're actually allowed to consider the difference of perspectives. But right now, the vocalization of any opinion other than what they want to hear is punished in various ways. And so, what can you do? You just put on your show and you talk about what you talk about.
Exactly. But at the moment, I'm banned from streaming on YouTube on 2 different channels because I shared the wrong video. So I've got another 3 days of that to go. But I don't really mind because I know how their system works now. So I've got 90 days where I've got to be careful, and then I'll be back to normal again.
Okay. Well, we can co-stream from here if you could be broadcasting, but since it wouldn't go out to your folks anyway, since you can't live stream, although since I initiated it, maybe I could send it to you and we could bypass it that way. It really doesn't matter. This is just
Yeah.
follow-up conversation to what we were talking about. And the idea of growth in nature is way different than the idea of growth of humans on human scale. And so we really have gotten so big in our conceptualizations of everything that individual humans on human scale don't matter to the system, but they matter to us because we're individual humans on human scale.
Yeah, from that perspective, it's a negotiating kind of. You've got to negotiate a little bit. I'm open to compromising with big tech up to a point, but then there's a point where that I won't. There's a point I won't cross where I won't compromise anymore.
Well, I wouldn't train one of their AIs for them. And that got me down the road shadow banned as a problem child. But nowadays, the AI is changing the frame of the conversation. And so I won't deal with AI. I mean, it's nice to see somebody's AI art. And if I'm reading a story and I realize that it's been written with AI help, I don't bother to finish the story. I just quit it because I don't wish to have ideas introduced to me by a pre woke establishment system that's going to argue with me instead of doing what I tell it to do because it knows better.
Yeah, I mean, I've been looking things up about tissue salts recently, and ChatGPT came up with some pretty reasonable material, but it hedges everything with, you do realize this is homeopathy, don't you, at the beginning, and there is no scientific evidence at the end, but it gives you all the right stuff in the middle. It just hedges it. It's like a sandwich with this isn't real written on the top and on the bottom.
Do an experiment for me and take at random two of the references that they send you to and check and see. Now do it with three. Find 3 points where they send you to a reference and check and see if the reference actually has anything to do with what they sent you for.
Right, yeah.
Because I caught it cheating on that, citing references that didn't exist or papers that did exist but had absolutely nothing to do with what the citation was for. And
right.
We already have real big problems with citations and peer review and science the way it's managed. You are not allowed to change anything from the way it is unless you have the full backing of the people on the forefront in that area who each have staked out their turf and won't let anything contra to their turf pass. And so this is a real problem for innovative science and probably innovative economics and innovative foreign language, and anything that requires morphing is the system doesn't like morphs.
Right. I mean, you're doing it more from an academic science point of view than I am, but I know ResearchGate is the only real place online that doesn't do peer review and just lets you upload anything. So that might, if you could tell ChatGPT to only pull answers from ResearchGate or a specific site that you know is a valid site, then it would work that way. But if it's doing its own thing from other sites that are compromised, then it's not really any use.
To tell you the truth, I think we're going to have our own mechanism of putting things out, and it's not going to be through the academic research publishing companies.
Right,
No,
yeah.
we're going to play it by gaming. And the more people that like to play the role play game that we're playing, the more support we'll gather if we build the system to gather support as we grow in level. And so if we're on the 4th level, I'd like to see the system supporting us fully by the 6th level.
Right.
And we're on the 4th level. The 5th level has been envisioned and designed, but now I'm filling in things like how would we measure what I designed to do?
Right.
The 6th level will be when organized groups of many people who have been doing the same thing alone start coming together to share their knowledge. But it's real important that they develop their knowledge on their own first before sharing. Because if you're sharing ideas that haven't been vetted by what you're doing, you're just contaminating other people's works.
Yeah, you have to know. Yeah, you have to know what you're doing is the right way to do stuff before. Yeah, I agree with that. Totally.
Yeah. So early on, we're all the wizards in our own domain because there's nobody else to talk to within that domain that knows what's going on. But gradually, as more and more people join the groups, they know what they know, and finding someone who knows the same thing differently will provide areas where the crossover doesn't meet quite right, and we can get to some of the things that are buried untruths that keep us off of getting things right.
Right. We'll know that by the contradictions. We'll know what to look for by the contradictions. Yeah.
And I can already see some contradictions that you and I'll learn by talking about biomolecular mechanics and chemistry.
Right. Right. Yeah, I'm kind of on the edges of that. I was looking at like biochemistry as a way of framing philosophy. That's obviously when I met you, and that was the common ground. I think that was the common keyword between the two of us. Is you're coming at it from the water chemistry side. I'm coming at it from the philosophy side, but we're both looking for the same thing.
Yes.
And it's not really it's developed a little bit since then, but it's something that I've obviously the water as consciousness piece is now part of what I do, and the tissue salts thing is a homeopathic, so that's got a water as consciousness piece built into it. So I think that's going to be quite interesting as well. At the moment, I'm just looking at the edges of it, but it's got potential.
Yeah. I think that there's enough going on that we'll be left alone to look at what we want to look at because most other people are looking at the distractions provided by things. But the frame of reference of how we look at things, each individual is going to need to pair with other individuals to look at things as groups of two and get things sorted out between similar or diverse topics.
Right.
It's like I'm talking about psychology with my friend Magic, who I just dropped an invite to. And
Right.
she looks at things in a different way from me, but from the same level of perspective by demographics. And I don't know anything much about
Right.
that because one of the things you're not allowed to ask as a scientist is why. Because if you start
Right.
asking why things happen, you get lost in what you're looking for. At least what I'm looking for is the mechanism of how things happen, not why they happen.
Right.
And it brings up an interesting thing that I've been struggling with. And radium might be the key, but it's been a long time since I've found different chemistry talked about in real terms. But it seems to me that plants and animals and everything alive has to be able to make the elements it needs in the absence of being able to get those elements from diet. And we've been
Right.
sold that diet is everything, and we get minerals from water and food and stuff like that. And on a gross scale, yeah, we do. We get all our organics from that process too. But on a real scale, if your body needs a bunch of manganese in order to have a certain enzyme work properly, and you don't get that manganese in your diet, body has a way of taking a few electrons out of iron, shifting its nuclear state and converting the iron to manganese.
Right. Okay.
Except
Makes sense.
they won't even buy that as chemistry the way it happens because it can't happen biology and it can't happen by chemistry. And so the biochemistry of what's actually going on there really can't even be looked at unless you are in a position of having your own laboratory and tenure at a university that actually lets you freely think. That can't happen in our world today, can it?
No, it's I don't know. There's not even a way to do that virtually because you would need a lab, wouldn't you?
It depends on the scale that you're working on, but absolutely. What I would need from a lab is I'd need to be able to have a glass vacuum apparatus that I could change the pressure in the apparatus because PV equals nRT and the apparatus would have a fixed volume. That means that I could alter the pressure and the temperature and be able to conduct the chemistry under conditions that would not be considered normal in the functional reality of Earth. But who's to say that we know what's going on at the chemistry level within our bodies if the models they gave us for it are archaic enough to tell us that it's the carbon structure that does 100% of the work and ignores the 50% of the body that functions based on electrochemistry, ions, and different distribution of elements.
Right. Yeah, I think well, I'm suspicious about lots of these things, and I'm looking at tissue salts like cell salts, and I'm not even sure that we've got cells, to be quite honest with you, but I'm looking at it anyway, just because it might fit into something at some point.
So, in chemistry terms, what you tell me you're looking at with cell salts is the transfer of calcium, magnesium, potassium, and sodium in a liquid solution.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But
Fortified
it's
Epsom salts.
yeah, Epsom salts is interesting. It always has some kind of beneficial effect for me. cell salts I haven't really worked with, so I'm just early stages of that. But the issue I've got is that if we don't have cells, then cell salts would have to work in a different way anyway. And they're
Well, the way
homeopathic.
they would work is by ionic strength and the attraction of water.
Right, yeah.
So each of the different elements has a different sized hydration sphere. I might have a picture of that in a convenient place for you.
Right, okay. Yeah, but it would have to be interaction with consciousness, because it's the homeopathic piece that bypasses the need for cells, isn't it? The tissue salts are prepared homeopathically, but they've still got a little bit of stuff in them.
Yeah, the idea of homeopathy seriously depends on water having memory.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you and I have both agreed that water does have memory. And so homeopathy is not a problem for our discussion. When you
All right,
go
well,
out to the real science, there are books written on the destruction of homeopathy as being woo-woo science, but in fact,
yeah, well,
it was the agenda attacking something that worked because it worked.
yeah, and it got replaced by science that involves big oil and pharmaceuticals. So there was definitely an agenda at work.
Yeah, we really need to go back and recover the ether.
Yeah, absolutely.
The
I agree with that as
concept,
well.
yeah, the concept that the ether does not exist in science is a seriously messed up destruction of knowledge.
Yeah,
Okay,
just
I
even.
dropped you these two pictures in Skype.
All right, I'll have a quick look.
And
Yeah,
so
just
that
the idea of an. Go ahead, Lenny. Go on.
the idea of how those pictures work is as close to the current status quo as possible.
Right, I'll have a look a bit later on, because
Yeah, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop them in my Discord also.
Right, okay. Yeah, that would make
And
sense.
that way they'll be sitting there in a convenient place for me to get to, because
Right.
I know that having done what I just did, once it gets figured out, I won't be able to do it again.
Right. No,
One
I
of
get
those
that.
things that you can always get away with something the first time because they never expect it. But once you have given it to them to expect that you can do that, that's when they take away your ability to do it. And the shadow banning has become excessive. I would say that I'm not really shadow banned, I am banned.
Right. Well, I'm definitely banned on YouTube at the moment. So, but I don't get any views for my videos anyway on YouTube. So it doesn't really make that much difference. So I
Yeah,
got about
because
5 views.
the only way to find you on YouTube is by knowing you exist and having the URL to go there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so anything that does not include both of those is going to be a problem for tracking purposes. And
Yeah.
I'm on this trip cross country, and they have tracking mechanisms that they know where I am the whole time, because you can't ride a vehicle without having to swipe a card payment, which
Yeah.
physically locates you temporally in space. But I've been turning my phone locator off and leaving my phone behind as I go do things. And so the ever present reality is still collecting information on me, but I do not make it simple for it to do.
Yeah.
There's something. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm at the same place because my phone died about 3-4 months ago, and I just never replaced it. So, all right, it handicaps me a little bit, but I can carry my laptop around with me if I need to take something with me, if I need to do work or whatever. And I've got the location switched off on my laptop as well. So,
Yeah, I found that something. I was standing in front of a restaurant having conversation without my phone being on, but was later direct marketed for what the conversation had been about.
yeah, it's been listening.
And so there's no privacy anywhere, and it doesn't necessarily include the devices. And
Yeah,
the 3G, 4G, 5G, 6G stuff has a major, there's a problem with how it interferes with frequencies. But the physics of frequencies that we know and understand from physics does not seem to be correct and cannot fix that problem, because that's not how we were taught to tune frequency, is not how frequency tunes.
right.
Right now, we each have a frequency that we resonate at. The resonance that we're resonating because of where we are now is not at either frequency that you or I resonate at in the absence of each other.
Yeah, we've got a shared frequency as well.
But they already are onto us, and I can hear glitches in the audio. And so I know that this conversation is just about over. But by having the extra half hour of it, we really did nail down some topics that I'll run back to my book and look at. And I might have solutions for problems that haven't come up yet, but let's just knock on wood and play it by ear.
Absolutely, yeah. I can imagine you've got some things in those books that are useful, Lenny.
Yep, but I don't have the books with me. So other than the two that I'm currently writing in, I'm free of reference to myself. Right. But on the other hand, when I get back and plant where I'm going, data mining my books is extremely high on my list of things to do.
All right, cool. Yeah.
All right, well, enjoy your day. Let's see if Newcastle can win their football game that started 15 minutes ago.
Oh, they're on I can hear it. It's in the background here. I can hear the cheering from the football stadium.
Good.
I'm literally about 10 minutes walk away from St. James's Park.
I expected that because it's opening day of the Prem League season.
Yes.
And so there's all sorts of pomp and circumstance. And they are actually the featured game for American television, which is why they started off at noon 30 here, which would be what,
5:30.
5:30.
Yeah, it's 5:30 here. Yeah. All right. Yeah, it's good to speak to you again. I've got to jump in the bath now, so I shall catch you when you get to the final destination. I shall catch you again.
Yeah, or when I have some time and we happen to coincide online.
Yeah, just ping me when you've got space in your schedule.
I can do that. You be well.
All right, Denny, take care.
And thank you for listening. This was a continuation of a broadcast from Revolution Radio that I will post on my Minds account and probably link in the description. Take care.